Good morning and welcome to this week's recruitment discussion with Jump. And this week we're going to be talking about struggling to find new talent, but still insisting on doing it the old ways. Now, I know the team love me giving a good old stat out. So, you know, I think I'm going to give some following stats, some very basic stats. And I drew these stats some time ago from the Office of National Statistics about the UK population. And this might give us an idea why the UK labour market is struggling for candidates at the moment in time. So this started back in 1964. There was 1 million children born in 1964. In 1975, so just 11 years later, that figure had dropped from 1 million to less than 600,000 children born in the UK. That was due to various different things. Obviously, the war had properly finished, and therefore the baby boomer era disappeared. The Abortion Act came in, women's rights came in, contraception became more mainstream, etc., etc. However, it meant that probably 40% of our working population has started to reduce. The next peak is in 2012 with just over 880,000 children born. And then it drops again consistently to 2022 with just under 680,000 children born in the UK. So it says we have a shrinking working population. You then put on top of that the number of 50 to 67-year-olds who've chosen to retire during lockdown and after lockdown because they can, has again reduced the working population. And before everybody starts about, well, what about Brexit? Only 480,000 people left the UK because of Brexit. So it's not really Brexit the issue. The issue is that our population, our working population, is constantly shrinking, and therefore the job market is growing. We've also gone from a blue collar market to a white collar market, so the markets are very different. So I've got Paul and Dave with us today. So I'm going to jump in straight with some questions. Paul's just rushed on from a client, so he's desperate for the first question. He's taken out ahead of Zach Mankill, taking that first question. But we know he's going to give a long answer for whatever it will be. So here we go. First question is, what are the most effective sourcing strategies for finding high quality candidates in today's job market?
Well, I tell you what, I'll go first, and I don't know whether this is the answer you expected, Howard, but I think the most effective sourcing strategy that we as recruiters can do is provide education to our clients. That's not the same as an answer to how do I get more candidates, but I think just think of the stats that you have given. I don't think many employers are aware of the workforce trends that we pick up on regularly. But it's often that as recruiters, we keep those workforce trends to ourselves. We don't share them. So we're all excited, or our consultants are excited when they get a requirement. Your clients need X number of candidates. But deep down, we kind of know that some of those people don't exist. And instead of educating the client at the very beginning of the conversation, when we go for that first meeting, even before we picked up a requirement, are you aware that in your sector, this is what's happening with the demographics? This is what's happening. These are the workforce trends. And it's that education that can help make taking the requirement much more intelligent. And I often say to my clients that if you could go back to the clients that you're talking to, often in this stage, the client wants 100% accuracy, but 80% will be good enough. And if you can educate them in that way, a sourcing strategy is having a wider pool of talent that's available, but isn't exactly what the client's looking for. And as long as you can back that up with education, I think you could be quite successful. I've got one client that has been placing people that are about 70% of what the client's looking for, rather than waiting 3 or 4 weeks or 3 or 4 months to find exactly the right client. So it's a slightly left field answer, but for me, education at the beginning is really important.
Very wise words, Mr. Pye, unexpectedly, but it's very good of you.
Well, it's going to be one of those days. It's going to be one of those days, is it?
Taken a few wise pills this morning. Well done, you. It's a great answer, actually, and I do think you're absolutely right. I think it comes down to constant communication. It's the thing that we engage people in our businesses to do. The problem we have, and you hit it pretty well here, Dave, is that we will spend a lot of time looking for hard to find candidates, and finding high quality or hard to find candidates. There's a reason why hard to find candidates are hard to find. It's often they don't exist. We joke about the astronaut that lives in Inverness, for example. Where do you find this person? They're not around. So it is about education. You're completely right. I think it's also primarily to do with our level of communication with our existing candidate database, and I can see the people that are attending today's webinar, and I know quite a lot of the people here have got very deep candidate talent pools already sitting on their CRMs. And it's very important that there's a constant level of engagement with the people that we have already attracted to our business, even when we're not actively helping them. So there's a lot that we can be doing to keep people aware of our services. At a certain point, they're going to want to change jobs. We know those moments are to a large extent linked with what's going on in the economy. We've got the election on Thursday. It's a reasonable bet that at some point, please God, in the next month or two, there'll start to be a bit more movement in the labour market, with people recognizing that if they're ever going to start changing jobs, now's probably the right time to get on with it. I think that behavior may well be exhibited through clients as well. So I think that some of it in terms of effective sourcing strategies is linked to economic cycles and being aware of when things are likely to be picking up and be ahead of that rather than wait until it actually happens. So I think that's super important. And I also think that it's a lot to do with making sure that you are an expert in your field, that you are an organization is recognized, and I know we'll come to this shortly, as an expert in your particular specialism, so that you're constantly talking about what's going on. As you said, Dave, educating your public, your clients, your candidates about trends, about movement, about what's occurring, so that you're very noisy in the right way, and that ultimately when people are seeking a new role or taking on a new member of staff, yours is the name that comes to their minds, not just because they've seen you on social media, but also because you've had constant contact with them in a variety of different forms.
So I think we're all going to talk about the same thing and approach it from a slightly different angle. Yeah, my view is that, yes, we need to educate the clients, but I think we need to educate the clients in a very different way. I think we need to stop thinking short term, stop the clients thinking short term, that they need a candidate now, they need a candidate today. But we need to start thinking about long term and when they start to plan the need for that candidate, because very few are an instant buyer, an instant need. So when do they start thinking about that? So therefore, we should start thinking about the average tenure of candidates. So if you start to think of the average role or the number of roles that you take on and start to look at those clients and look at those positions, what's the average tenure of that role? And therefore, we need to start thinking about a long-term marketing strategy to those candidates and start to think about when they start to think about moving. Because they don't start to think about moving just because they've seen a job advert. That's the last part. That's just the catalyst that makes them apply. They'd probably start to think about moving probably 12 months before that. So if you think about someone who's got an average tenure of 2 years, I was talking to a client the other day, they've got an average tenure of 3 years. And we said then that every time then someone gets to a 2-year mark, they've been on your system for 2 years, then we should be advertising. Are you now started thinking for a role, etc.? Are you thinking of moving? Are you thinking of moving to the next position? Then we can start to build exclusive candidates. So we need to be starting to approach our candidates early, which means we need to create immediate, marketing to them. So it's not going to be an immediate success, but what it's going to be is over a longer period of time, what we're going to start to do is grow a really good bank of candidates that we can take to market rather than waiting for the market to come to us to ask for what they want. So the next question then, I think this falls really nicely into that, is can all of us then share successful techniques for improving employer branding to attract top talent?
How can you clarify? By employer branding, do you mean the end client, or do you mean us as recruiters and our branding?
I will give you the option of both.
Oh, there you go, Dave.
There you go,
generous
Dave.
to a fault.
I know. And does the answer change? I think the thing is, so often with us as recruiters is, particularly if you're in the temp market, it's I need a candidate tomorrow. There isn't a lot of opportunity to promote the employer as well as the job. On the permanent side, of course, you're a bit more involved and it can take a bit longer. So I would say, and I don't know whether you'd agree with this, Paul, but where you can promote the employer, do so.
Yep.
Because if your relationship is strong enough with the employer, then I think you don't have the fear of, well, what if I tell them, it's Ford Motor Company that want these 3 people? Everybody else is going to know. I think candidates expect a better level of honesty, a better level of trust with their agency. So if you can mention the employer and then look at how the employer models itself online on their website in the way that they engage with maybe their own talent community as well as using agencies, and either match that or add to that so that you are seen to be intrinsically linked with the employer. Of course, that doesn't apply if it's I need a contractor tomorrow, because you haven't got that opportunity. But where you can, promote yourself as a recruiter of choice. So you should have references on your website from your candidates as well as from your clients. Rarely do I see recruiters have candidates on their website praising how they've behaved. I think you should show that because it's so important. But often we do have that with clients. So one strategy for me is make sure you've got the way that you deal with your candidates on your website as well as your employers. And where you can, show the type of organisations you work with. I know some agency owners are very reticent to do that, but I would encourage you to do that if you can.
Well, I think, Dave, before Paul jumps with an answer, we talked last week and we talked when Johnny Miller was on, who's a website designer, talking about social proof. And what clients and candidates are looking for before they engage with you is social proof. So they're going onto your website and going onto Google reviews and looking at the reviews that you've got from candidates and clients. And therefore, if you're putting Chris, a developer, has got this, they don't believe that because it's not a real, it should be Dave Pye from Jump has said this about us, so they can actually track that person. So if you're going to do that, then you've got to make sure your social proof is genuine social proof. And therefore, your Google reviews, your testimonials on your website need to be a little bit sharper than most people have, because they are trying to hide the client's name and things like that, which I think is just folly if you've got a good relationship with your client. Paul, sorry.
Yeah, no, Howard, you've said pretty much what I was about to say, which I think it again backing up Dave's point that if we can get the logos of the clients that we work with their permission, of course, onto our website, we can put case studies onto our website about our successful recruitment campaigns with our clients. We can get recommendations or referrals or testimonials from clients on the website again, and on social media, as you point out, social proof, Howard. Absolutely, we should be doing that. And by the way, not just about the organization, the name over the door, but the individuals in the business. One of the things that I'm keen to see as well are candidate charters or client charters. What is it we're going to do for our public, for the people that use our services? What can they expect from us when they engage with us? When was the last time you guys saw anything on a recruitment agency site that was very specific about the care and consideration and help that they were going to be given by that company, the steps that would be taken? Nothing too complicated, but what can people expect when they engage with the organization? And so I think you're right to say that if you can expose the clients you work with, and to your point, if you can get candidates to say nice things about you, and why wouldn't they? We do pretty good things for candidates. Then I think that has a big impact. And I think you're right about what Johnny's point was made when we met him, which is, what do we all do? I mean, if you go on Amazon and you buy a product, I don't know about anyone else, but I will look at the product, look at the technical spec, and I probably almost always check to see what people say about it before I decide to purchase. Sometimes I purchase, sometimes I read bad reviews and I don't. And I think that we all do that. You do that when you go on holiday, you check out hotels and what people say about it, but we don't apply that logic to our own businesses. And part of it, to Dave's point, is we're nervous about, understandably, I might add, exposing the names of the organizations we work with, because we worry that our competitors are going to get in there and try and steal business from us, as if that doesn't already happen, by the way. And I think that the answer ultimately is you have to be tight enough to your clients. You have to have a good enough relationship with the organizations that you work with to ask their permission to use their names. And by the way, dual branding on advertising jobs makes a massive difference to the amount of people that respond. So if we can do that, we've got exclusivity or retained business, and we're using dual branding, it makes a big difference, a big impact on the amount of people or the quality of the people that respond to the ads. So it is about more exposure, but it also comes back to this point about being close enough to clients to be able to do the things we've just described.
So I'm going to put a different spin on that. Okay. And I'm going to make a spin for Gen Zers, because we all think Gen Zers do this, but I've seen a lot of Gen X do this and starting to do this. And it's about the reality of what you get when you walk across the client's doorstep. So what's the client selling to what the reality is that the candidate receives? So the EV point is what we're looking at. And therefore, that needs to be part of your service offering to your client. It shouldn't be just about taking a job spec, your career prospects, but you need to develop your client's EVP to be aligned what reality is. Therefore, if I go back to my first point about approaching candidates early, if you've got a good EVP from a client and you put that into the candidate marketplace, then all of a sudden you've got candidates being attracted to that client. So we can start to think about if we can get our EVP up and that matches what they actually see, because lots of people are going into businesses and going, actually, what I've got in the first 3 days isn't what you promised me. So I'm off, because they've all got 3 or 4 offers. So clients need to be thinking their brand simply isn't about attracting customers, but it's about attracting and retaining employees. So we have never had an opportunity before, like we have at the moment, to go in and help build the client's employer value proposition and actually place that proposition into the candidate marketplace, which helps attract and then retain candidates. But we don't think about it in that way. We take the basic understanding from the clients on the job spec and try to do that. I think we should be getting better at understanding what the EVP is and what alignment to reality is, because otherwise that will have a problem from a dropout point of view, which I know we are going to talk about next. So what are the key attributes then to look for during the interview process to ensure candidates' long-term success and fit with a client?
I think it's important that when you take a requirement, and can we just say in my answer, I'm talking mainly about permanent work or maybe long-term contract.
I think, David, it goes for both. I think it goes right across both, Dave.
It does, but for some of our clients, they're hiring people for 6 hours. Yeah, they need a warehouse truck driver for today, and it's 1 day. So in some respects, this answer that I'm about to give doesn't apply there. But culture is so important. Do you understand the culture of the client that you're recruiting for? Because if you can have that conversation with the candidates, because the question is not, can this candidate do the job? The question is, can this candidate do the job here? And if you understand the culture of the client and you understand the motivation of the candidate, and I'm not teaching this to psychics, we've all done this before, but if you understand that right, then you've got a much better chance of the candidate staying for much longer than is the average tenure, because they understand the culture of what it makes to work here. And that's particularly important when so much of work is either hybrid or all at home. So what is the culture like for hiring a candidate at X company when most of their time is going to be spent working at home and their teams are literally online teams? Yeah, did that culture fit with the hiring company? And if it does, and if you understand that as a recruiter, you're going to have a much greater success of making the candidate stay. And of course, if they stay, you've got a happier client, they'll come back to you for more.
Yeah, I think you said that really well, Dave. This is kind of a pet annoyance for me, this whole this question in itself, not your question, Howard, although you have lots of questions that are annoying, but this particular isn't my point. I would say
Hey,
it's
Howard,
this
that means
particular
one each now.
subject.
We've both been told off, Howard.
I know. He's been banking these, obviously.
Yeah. Listen, we're not only halfway through. There's more to come. But I would say, this is a particular irritant for me, because what happens here is we accept job roles from clients, and you make a great point, Dave. And what we have there is a digital job description. That's all we have. It's a bunch of words. It gives us an understanding of the skill sets the client's looking for. It tells us what kind of experience and qualifications they must have, and so on and so on. So you've got the basics, but there's just a massive void. We have no understanding, if we haven't met the client, not just once, but several times, what kind of personality type they're looking for. What's the, to Howard's point, what's the EVP there? What's the cultural alignment that they're looking for? What kind of personality fit are we looking at? Emotional intelligence fit are we looking for? Now, there's just a massive amount of information that you simply cannot place on a job description. And the only way, as recruitment professionals, that we can truly understand what makes a great fit for our candidate and a great fit for our client is to have a level of knowledge, deep level of knowledge of the organizations we're representing. And there are no easy ways around this. You have to go and see the client. You have to be in front of them. Now, I accept that we often work, as you made the point a moment ago, Dave, work from home. People aren't always in the office. We can't always meet them easily, or they're around other parts of the country. But we use Zoom, we use Teams and various other methods like this. There are no excuses any longer for not engaging with people face to face to get more information. And I personally, thinking back to my days, many years of working as a consultant, I would have found it incredibly hard to sell a role into a candidate, to get them excited about it without that in-depth knowledge of the organization. Not every organization we work on behalf of are top clients. Some of the environments aren't brilliant, Sometimes the offices are a bit grotty, or maybe the work's not that interesting. There's always a match for those organizations, but you've got to be able to understand the positives as well as the negatives. You've got to be able to sell the organization in all its forms to the candidate to get them interested. And equally, of course, we have the same issue with candidates. We don't see them any longer face to face the way we used to. And again, it's the same question, but in reverse. We need to understand their emotional fit for an organization. What is it they're looking for from an emotional perspective, from a career perspective, and so forth. Now, I know everybody listening to this will understand what I'm saying. And I know there are obstacles and challenges in getting in front of clients and getting in front of candidates, but we should be fighting every inch of the way to try to enable situations for us to be able to do our jobs professionally. You wouldn't ask an estate agent to sell your home unless that estate agent came to your home and took very nice glossy photographs, measured properly, and then produced a very nice glossy leaflet or brochure or whatever to entice people to come and see it. If they said to you, tell me about your home over the phone, or send me a description via email, you wouldn't engage that estate agent. So I think the fact is that we've allowed clients to dictate to us in these situations, and we need to fight back, because in order to help our clients properly do a professional job, we have to have an intimate knowledge of their organizations to be able to make the match that they seek from us. Otherwise, we're into just chucking CVs, and everybody knows my views about that. So this is a very big question, I think.
So I'm going to spin on that then, Paul, because I think we need to take control of the candidates. I think it's back to basic. If you want to have long-term success, reduce dropouts, we need to be in control of the candidates. And I think we're no longer in control of the candidates. We fear, because we hear about the amount of opportunities they have, we fear the counter-offer. But these need tabling, and tabling every time we speak to the candidate. Has anything changed since last time we spoke? Has anything moved since last time we spoke? Every time we gain more information, we need to make a better informed decision on whether I keep that candidate in the process or whether I pull that candidate. And I think we, at the moment, fear pulling candidates out of a process because we fear that that's going to look bad on the client. And I've had two clients last week that I was working with. where they both had candidates pull out, and both have had the client has blamed the recruitment agency because of them. But when I spoke to both the agencies about the candidate, they both said the same thing. Well, I thought they were going to pull out. I didn't think they were going to. They had better offers. Well, if they had better offers, why aren't you going to the client and saying these candidates have got better offers? I'm going to pull them from the process before we get there. But we don't. And so we're making ourselves, because we aren't in control, look a little bit weak. And I think we look weak to the candidate, and therefore we look weak to the client when the candidate pulls out, because the client looks at us and blames us, especially if we've got the knowledge or we have that gut feeling. And I think we need to get back in the process of controlling that recruitment process, control the interview process, make better informed decisions. And if it means pull the candidate, but go and speak to the client and inform the candidate of your decision, and they may make the decision with you. Therefore, it's both your decisions, not just yours. And I think we really need to get back on that horse, because I think we've lost that through lockdown. Absolutely, we've lost control of the candidates. So the question then is, how can a recruitment agency create a better candidate and client experience that helps reduce dropouts?
And I think the first thing to look at is, do you as a consultant at your desk, do you as a business know why, absolutely why, your candidates are dropping out? There may be a myriad of reasons, and this may be back to Recruitment 101, but it's about checking, why are they leaving? Well, why are they dropping out? What's going on? What's causing that to happen? And whatever that list is, and that list may be 20 long, 25 long, yeah, sitting down with the consultants, looking at the candidate management, looking at the client management, and finding out what's going on, and using that to use the questions to get better candidate control in the first place. So it almost answers that the question before, Howard. It's looking at them and going, right, what's the cause here? Is the cause at the client end? In other words, is there more work I need to do with the client? For example, one of the clients that my client was working with a few weeks ago, the candidate was on their 5th interview. Kill surprise, they took another job. Yeah. And the education bit was, you can't do 5 interviews in a market where there's a shortage of talent. Yeah. So the learning bit was going back to the consultant and making sure that she, in this case, knew that actually this process was going to be 5 interviews. In that case, well, actually, you need to educate the client, going back to my first point. If you're going to take longer than 4 or 5 weeks to get this person on board as a process, you're not going to have much success. We may not be able to help you in this instance.
Yeah.
And be that strong about it, because you're using data to help them to decide what's going to happen. But you've got to have the data. You've got to ask the questions in the first place.
Yeah, Dave, you're completely right. You're talking about education. By the way, you sound like whispering Bob Harris today. I don't know if there's a reason for that, but
thank you. I'm available for sounds of the 70s, or is that Johnny Walker?
That was Johnny Walker.
Yeah, well, okay.
That's the old grey whistle. Anyway,
move on, old man.
For those people a lot younger than us, they won't understand that, Craig. But in any case, I've
got Stevie Nicks sitting next to me.
if only. I would say, to your point, it's a very good one. It is about educating. It's about educating clients and candidates. It's also, you alluded to this, not working on roles that we shouldn't be working on, where it's a pretty strong outcome that we're not going to get anywhere with either the filling the role or indeed helping the candidate. I do think, and I'm going to come back to something I made a point about earlier. Let's step outside of recruitment for just a minute and take a look at world-class businesses. World-class businesses focus on providing brilliant customer support. They spend a lot of time analyzing how they support their clients. What is it that they give that provides value? Why do people keep coming back over and over again? It's not just about the product. It's about the actual service they receive. And I think that in our industry, we ought to be giving time on a regular basis to analyze how we work with candidates. I said it earlier, what's our charter? What's the minimum level of service that candidates are going to receive from us when they engage with us and with the clients as well? How do we get tighter, closer to people to ensure that their journey with us throughout the process of finding a new job or finding a great new employee is going to be successful and is going to be professionally managed or even enjoyable on occasions? How are we going to ensure that happens? Do we leave it down to the individuals that we engage in our businesses to do their own thing? Because I think that is what happens 90% of the time. Or do we have some very clear, what would be the phrase I would use, processes that everybody in our businesses adhere to? There are steps that we take that ensure that clients get a consistent service from us. So again, if you look outside of our industry and you look at other organizations, so I mean, let's take, I don't know, it seems an odd one to specify, but if you talk about McDonald's, it doesn't matter which restaurant in the world you go into, their whole methodology is that your service level, the service you received, the taste of the burgers will be exactly the same, whether it's a franchised unit or it's a house-owned unit. It'll be the same. Everything is very detailed. The same would be true of Apple and all the very big corporates. So I think it comes down to this point, not only about educating, but it's also about educating our own people and making sure that we're very rigid about certain things that we do with our clients and candidates, so that there is an expectation. It should be a high bar in order to ensure that we stand out from the crowd.
So I think then we need to think about it in a slightly different way. I think if we want to give candidates and clients a better experience, the candidates, we need to give more opportunity. And then what Dave was saying earlier, we need to educate the client on their poor processes. If they're doing 5 or 6 interviews and everyone else is doing 1 or 2, of course they're going to lose the best candidates in the marketplace because their process is too long. Even the big 4 have stopped doing their ridiculous 7, 8, 9, 10 interview strategy and have started to boil it down to a 2, 3 interview strategy. So even the big people that were doing that have massively changed that. But I think we've got to start to think, if we can start to create more opportunities for our candidates and create a better recruitment process, which is part of the client's EVP, by the way, then we need to think, if every candidate has at the moment between 3 and 5 offers, that's not opportunities, that's offers, but we're only putting the candidate to 1 off opening, then our percentage chance of placing that candidate instantly drops. Our percentage chance of having more counter offers or having a buyback, etc., becomes. So I think we need to stop being the martyr and start thinking about where our loyalties lie. Is it with the candidate? Is it with the client? Or is it with yourself? Because if you put your loyalties with the candidate and the client first and foremost, then what you do is you're forgetting about yourself. So as a recruiter, I always put the loyalty as to myself. If I wanted to have a candidate opportunity, I'd put my candidates to multiple opportunities, and therefore I increase my percentage chance of placing it. I was then very open with my client about what those opportunities were, and that created urgency from my client. So I had a candidate client that had more urgency. I had a candidate that had multiple choice, and what happened was my fill ratio went up. And it was all about my fill ratio, and that was all about giving a better service to my candidate and a better service to my client, and that was about giving them a better experience all the way through. Candidates want to know more jobs. Clients want to have a better experience with that candidate, and therefore knowing what they've got on the table is absolutely important, I think, to increase your fill ratio. So talking of that then, what other strategies can be employed to reduce candidate dropout and improve retention rates during the hiring process?
I think one point here is when we're taking the requirement from the client will be an individual person. Do we know empirically, what a difference to the hiring manager or the hiring person, what a difference to their career does it make to find the right candidate? So what's in it for them? I'm looking for 3 of these, 2 of these, 5 of these to work on a project. And so what? What happens to you, to the client, if we get this right or when we get this right? Because if we can understand that, it makes the interview process when we find the candidate a lot easier. Because we find the candidate and we say to the client, look, if you take so-and-so and you can act in a responsible manner and you can do it quickly, this is what's going to happen. And, you spoke about your career, you spoke about this opportunity within your business. This will help you do that. And I think that's just a more intelligent way of approaching the client, candidate, employer relationship, because it is that triangle. Often, many of the consultants who are fairly new to our business see themselves in some way a subservient role. Oh, I've got a client, it's really important. Oh, well, I've found a candidate. And they see themselves as somehow beneath those two. Well, actually, that isn't the way it is. All three, us as the broker, the candidate, and the success of the client, absolutely matters equally. So we have to raise our thinking as well to think, well, your career doesn't move ahead unless we find you the right person. This is really important, but we forget it. And those of us who've been around a long time, it's almost like this is recruitment 101, but it worked and it still works. Even with the rise of everything that's going on in recruitment, motivation for hiring is vital.
I agree with you completely. Look, I think it comes down to commitment, urgency. What are the drivers? Why does somebody want to change jobs? I mean, we consistently, again, you talk about 101 recruitment, the basics, but one of the first questions you should be asking any candidate is, what are their reasons for changing jobs? I always say when I train consultants, you need 3 emotional reasons for people changing jobs. What are they? If it's just money, and that's the thing that you get from the candidate, then it's almost certain that they'll take the counter offer because they're not unhappy in the job. They're not bothered about really leaving. They're going to use you as a lever to get more money where they are. So what are the drivers? Is it they don't like the content of the work, they don't like the business they work for, they don't like their boss, they've been passed over for promotion 4 or 5 times, they don't feel they're being trained correctly? There's got to be good reasons, very solid reasons as to why people want to change jobs, and it's your job to find those things out from the get-go, from the first time you actually engage with people, and understand the urgency involved. Do they want to change jobs now? Are they really committed to moving on? I think that process applies to your clients as well. How quickly do they want to take people on? Where's the urgency? What's going to happen from their perspective if they fail to fill the role in the next 3-4 weeks? These are the questions you've got to be pressing on. Again, back to the earlier point about just taking a job description email. You're not going to get to the bottom of what it is that's driving clients to fill roles. What's going on in the organization? What are their plans over the next 3 months, a year? How important is this role to the organization, and so forth? But of course, with candidates, it comes down to something that's deeper in a sense. It's about their emotional state. Why do they want to change? By the way, have they gone to see other recruitment businesses? Are you one of many they've contacted, or are you the first? And how long have they been looking for a new role? Is it now that's just happened, they've decided, or have they been looking for the last 12 weeks? There are questions right back to the basics that we need to be asking to establish commitment, urgency, before we engage with helping candidates or indeed clients. And we don't do that as well as we should as an industry, which is often why people then let us down at the last minute, or clients back out, or whatever, all the bad conclusions. We've got to take control and not be nervous about being assertive. I didn't say aggressive. I didn't say pushy. I said assertive, and for that, read professional.
So I think an area that we don't often think about then is we want a client value proposition from the recruitment agency to the client. We want an employee value proposition. We should think about a candidate value proposition. How is the candidate aligned to the client? Now, we'd probably do a little bit of that, but if we dig deeper into the candidate and create a really good candidate value proposition and then market that to the client and match the CVP to the EVP, then will we get a better match? Now, we do that already, but do we really focus on it? Do we actually seek more alignment? So let's go to my point 1. If we have candidates, in the process for longer, perhaps we can start talking to that candidate and gaining their trust by better marketing, better physical discussions, presenting them to a client earlier, or vice versa, presenting the client to the candidate earlier, and therefore we should get a stronger bond. And I think, if we knew what a client was doing, let's say we know a client's looking October, I'd be introducing candidates to them now without a job spec, okay? Because the alignment of the client's marketplace and culture matches what the candidate wants, and therefore you could have an exclusive candidate, which then is not moving now, that is thinking about the moving, but we can get into the process earlier. So it means that we could start to think about introducing product to our clients earlier, rather than waiting for the client to come and ask for product and then you're in competition with everybody else. And I think we've got to start to think that if we've got good candidate knowledge of what they truly seek outside, and what you said there, Paul, about having three things, and money's not the big driver. What are the other three or four things? How do they align to the client's value proposition? Then all of a sudden you can start to take candidates to clients in a far different way than we are doing, rather than just spamming a client across. So I think to reduce dropouts, we've got to get earlier in the process. And I think we should be thinking about how we can take the exclusive candidates to the client early in the process, before the client releases the job, because we know that job is coming up. And I think that, to me, is a very different way than before, and something that we should be thinking about. So last question then. In our experience, what are the common mistakes recruitment agencies make when trying to attract new talent, and how do we avoid those?
Assuming new talent means new people.
New people to their clients, new candidates to the end clients.
And by that I mean not checking whether existing people that they know have new skills. Often recruitment companies are the last to know what the newest skills are. On the contract market, often contractors send their CVs or put their CVs online or on LinkedIn, and they market it least to their existing agency. So are you fully aware of the people that are in your network, in that hot list that you've created, in that network community that you've created? Are you fully aware of the skills that they have, and the skills that they have which are transferable? Because it may not be new talent that you need. It may be talent that already exists that you know about, but you just may not be sure exactly what their skills are. So, of course, when you look for a new search, you look for new people. All I would encourage us all to do is just to check out that the people that we already know haven't got new skills that we don't know about, because those new skills could be an absolute blessing for some of the clients that we're working with.
Yeah, I think you said it very well. Very often we pick up new roles, and the first thing we do is we advertise them. We spend money on job boards. We go searching through LinkedIn and so forth, when actually the talent that we're looking for is already on our database. We're already busy on our database with people that can do the jobs. The problem we've got is that we don't keep in touch with those candidates to the extent we should. So the CVs are often a bit old. The data is not particularly accurate. And yet these are the very people that we actually would like to attract for the roles we've just taken. A lot of it comes down to, as I said at the top of this discussion, keeping in constant contact in a variety of ways with the people that have already engaged with us. And to your point, Dave, understanding hopefully that their skill sets have changed, that they've improved over several years and so forth. I think that's super important. Instead of just knee-jerk trying to find new candidates, and often actually then attracting the very candidates we already had sitting on our database in the first instance. So I think that is a common mistake. I see it all the time. And I think it's something that can be avoided with more effort. Back to the issue about processes and making sure we've embedded processes to keep in constant contact with candidates that we've tried to help, or indeed that we have helped. I think that makes a big difference. I also think that it's about making sure that this has been a central theme. We really understand the role that we are trying to fill, not just the job description, the actual personality, if you like, of the organization, that we have a very comprehensive understanding of what kind of person is going to fit. When we know that, it makes it easier for us to refine the way in which we market the role, the way we word the role, where we advertise it, the descriptive powers of our words and so forth, so that we can be more specific and attract the right kind of people. What we don't want to do is find hundreds of people applying and only a very few are what we're looking for. We need to be very specific, but in a way that is going to enable us to be able to engage with the right people all of the time. And I think that does come down to your point right at the beginning, Dave, about educating and making sure we're close to clients.
So I think when we talk about attracting new talent and mistakes agencies make, I think we start to touch on lots of things there. And I think the big thing is that first impression. And we need to start to think about where candidates start to see us. When they start to shop for a job or start to look for recruitment agencies, they're looking at you online before they engage with you. So if you've got a poor job spec, a poor job advert, if the initial engagement, if they've applied to a job is poor, if you've got a poor initial interview process, if you've got poor knowledge of the client, if your website's really hard to navigate round or you're demanding so much information, they've got so much more choice, they can move on. So that first impression really counts. So candidates will be doing their research about you as much as you're doing your research about them. So again, we go back to that social proof of how good you are with your candidates and your clients. You talked about there about putting, a candidate charter on their website to what they're expecting from there. So if they don't like what they see, they simply go onto the job boards or go onto Google and find somebody else advertising a job and apply directly for that. So they'll skip your roles.
Yeah.
So I think user experience is really important. Social proof is really important, but it's that first contact. And we've got to get away from our heads. That first contact isn't when we talk to them. Our first contact is when they engage with us electronically online. That's their first contact. So if that first contact isn't great, then that's a problem. So the common mistakes recruitment agencies make are poor website, poor job advert, etc., etc. They've just reeled off. They're the mistakes people make, and where other people then write a better job advert or have a better and easy website, they get so much more engagement from there. Yeah. So I think there's an awful lot that we need to start to think about attracting and gaining candidates in this modern marketplace that are simple fixes for recruiters, but we tend to ignore them because we are maybe a little bit arrogant about our own processes and arrogant about our own capabilities. We've got to start to think about it, I think, from a candidate and client side and see what we can do. Paul, Dave, that's it for today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Next week, we're going to have a very interesting webinar. Obviously, the market started to change. It's starting to build for lots of people. Now, a couple of years ago, we had quiet quitting. But as the market's up, are you going to have a talent drain? And are you leaking talent? So we're going to talk about how to retain your best people. We're going to talk about how to create stronger second string people, as in second people down the line, rather than management line, etc., and how to create opportunities for all. So once again, thank you very much for this week.
Thank Dave, you, everybody.
Paul, thank you very much. Much appreciated. I look forward to all seeing you all next week.
And don't forget to vote.
Take your ID, Dave. Take your ID. It's a modern world. Take your ID.
Yeah, they might think you're only 16, Dave. You never know.
This is a public information message from Whispering Bob Harris.
Thank you, Whispering Bob. Goodbye, all.